what do you believe is the worst thing in the world? And pause for a moment and ponder this question. Could it be poverty, war, famine, or perhaps something more personal? This question is not as straightforward as it may seem. It probes into the depths of our values, our fears, our understanding of the world. It sets the stage for an exploration of a topic that will likely challenge your preconceived notions. Your answer might surprise you. Let's find out. People have different opinions on what they consider the worst thing in the world. It's a statement that rings true in every corner of our globe, reflecting the vast array of perspectives that shape our collective human experience. When asked this question, many would point to war, the horrors of conflict, the loss of innocent lives, the devastation of societies. It's a grim reality that has plagued us since the dawn of time. In fact, throughout the 20th century alone, over 100 million lives were lost as a direct result of wars. Others might say that poverty is the worst thing in the world. The stark inequality that exists in our societies, where the top 1% of the population owns nearly half of the world's wealth. The fact that over 700 million people worldwide live in extreme poverty, surviving on less than $2 a day. Then there are those who fear disease more than anything else, the rapid spread of illnesses, the pain and suffering they cause, and the fact that every year, millions of people lose their lives to diseases that are often preventable. From the Spanish flu that claimed 50 million lives in the early 20th century to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, disease is a universal concern that knows no borders. And let's not forget about personal fears. For some, the worst thing might be losing a loved one, living alone, or even facing their mortality. These fears, while deeply personal, are part of the universal human experience, reminding us of our shared vulnerability. So, as you can see, the worst thing in the world can take on many forms, shaped by our individual experiences, beliefs, and fears. It's a subjective question with no definitive answer, reflecting the complexity and diversity of our human experience. But what if the worst thing is something more universal? Something that transcends borders, cultures, and individual experiences. Something that, in one way or another, underlies all these fears and concerns we've discussed. Stay with me as we delve deeper into this thought in the next scene. Could ignorance be the worst thing in the world? It's a question that may seem extreme, but let's delve into it. Ignorance, as we know, is a lack of knowledge or awareness. But what happens when this lack of understanding permeates our society? Consider this. Many of the world's biggest problems are fueled by ignorance. Let's take climate change as an example. Despite overwhelming scientific evidence, there are still people who deny its existence. That's ignorance. It's the same ignorance that leads to the relentless pollution of our planet, the destruction of our forests, and the extinction of countless species. And it's not just about our environment. Ignorance can be seen in the persistent inequality we witness every day. It's ignorance that perpetuates stereotypes, fuels discrimination, and hinders social progress. It's ignorance that allows for the spread of misinformation, resulting in confusion, mistrust, and in some cases, outright hostility. Take, for instance, the global health crises we've faced. Misinformation and lack of understanding have often made the situation worse, leading to unnecessary panic, non-compliance to safety measures, and even loss of lives. That's the power of ignorance. It can turn an already challenging situation into a catastrophe. So what do the numbers say? Well, a study by the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization suggests that if all students in low-income countries left school with basic reading skills, we could reduce global poverty by around 12%. That's a significant impact, isn't it? Another example is the World Health Organization's report stating that ignorance about health issues is one of the main reasons for the spread of preventable diseases. In fact, it states that basic health education could prevent millions of deaths each year. These are just a few examples that illustrate the power of ignorance. It's not merely a lack of knowledge, it's a force that drives many of the world's most pressing issues. So next time you think about the worst thing in the world, perhaps ignorance should be at the top of your list. Ignorance, it seems, has a broader impact than we might have initially thought. The consequences of ignorance are far-reaching. Imagine a world where decisions are made based on hearsay, misinformation, or simply a lack of understanding. This is the world we live in when ignorance is allowed to flourish. Ignorance often leads to misinformed decisions. When we lack knowledge or understanding, we are more likely to make choices that are not in our best interests or the interests of those around us. For example, a person who is ignorant about the impacts of climate change might not see the urgency in reducing their carbon footprint. This ignorance leads to decisions that contribute to the worsening of our environment. Moreover, ignorance can breed conflict and misunderstanding. Ignorance of other cultures, religions, or ways of life can create a breeding ground for prejudice and intolerance. People fear what they do not understand, and this fear can lead to hostility and even violence. According to a study by the Anti-Defamation League, over 70% of hate crimes are rooted in ignorance and misunderstanding of other groups. Furthermore, ignorance can lead to the spread of misinformation and fake news, which can have serious consequences on a societal level. A study conducted by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology found that false news spreads 6 times faster than true news on social media. This rapid spread of misinformation can lead to public panic, wrongful persecution, and even influence political outcomes. On a global scale, ignorance can hinder progress. Without a proper understanding of the world's problems, we cannot hope to find solutions. Ignorance can prevent us from seeing the full picture, from understanding the root causes of issues, and from making the changes needed to address them. The costs of ignorance are indeed high. It affects us on a personal level, influencing our decisions and actions. It impacts our communities, leading to conflict and misunderstanding. And it affects our world, hindering progress and contributing to the spread of misinformation. So ignorance isn't just a personal problem, it's a global one. But there's hope. Ignorance isn't unbeatable. Indeed, while ignorance may be a foe as old as humanity itself, it's one we can vanquish. There are weapons at our disposal, tools we can use to combat this pervasive enemy. Let's delve into some of them, shall we? First and foremost, education is our most effective weapon. With knowledge, we can illuminate the dark corners where ignorance hides. A study from the University of Cambridge showed that students who received a comprehensive education were significantly less likely to hold prejudiced views. They had a broader understanding of the world, breaking down barriers of ignorance. But education isn't just about what we learn from textbooks. It's also about life experiences, about understanding different cultures, perspectives, and ways of life. This leads us to our second weapon, open-mindedness, the willingness to accept that our own perspective isn't the only one, to acknowledge that there might be other valid points of view. This ability to embrace diversity, to appreciate the richness of our human tapestry, is a powerful antidote to ignorance. Finally, let's talk about communication. It's not enough to just acquire knowledge and keep an open mind. We need to communicate, to share our perspectives and learn from others. A study from Harvard University found that open and respectful dialogue can significantly reduce prejudice and bias. It bridges gaps, fosters understanding, and combats ignorance. But why is all of this important? Why should we bother to fight ignorance? Well, the answer is simple: because ignorance fuels division, it breeds prejudice and fosters hatred. It's the root of many of the problems we face in society today. But by combating ignorance, we can build a more understanding, more inclusive, and ultimately a better world. Remember, this isn't a battle we can afford to lose, because the cost of ignorance is too high. So let's equip ourselves with education, open-mindedness, and communication. Let's break down the walls of ignorance and build bridges of understanding. Fighting ignorance isn't just beneficial, it's essential. So, could ignorance really be the worst thing in the world? Let's take a moment to reflect on our journey so far. We've explored the power of ignorance, its consequences, and how we can combat it. Remember the provocative question we started with? It's been a thread running throughout our discussion, and now it's time to tie it all together. Ignorance isn't just a lack of knowledge. It's a choice, a decision to stay in the dark when the light of understanding is within reach. It's a refusal to grow, to evolve, and to better oneself. We've seen how ignorance can lead to harmful consequences, from misinformed decisions to unnecessary conflicts and a general lack of progress. It's not just about the individual, but the society as a whole. When ignorance prevails, we all lose. But we also discussed the antidote to ignorance, knowledge. Knowledge empowers, it enlightens, and it liberates. It's a tool for growth, a catalyst for change, and a beacon in the darkness. So, is ignorance the worst thing in the world? Well, if we consider the damage it can cause and the opportunities it can rob us of, then yes, it might very well be. It's time to consider the power of knowledge and the dangers of its absence. Let's bid goodbye to ignorance, the worst thing in the world. For more interesting videos, like and subscribe. Amazed Info.